Good afternoon. We are live here on Wild Card Saturday on the RAS Picks YouTube channel. Going to try do these and mix it in, change things up a little bit. We'll go half an hour before the kickoff of the first game. Every wild card and divisional round playoff games we'll do one today. We'll do one same time tomorrow, same time Monday, and then we'll get two more going next weekend as well and see if there's an appetite for content this close to kickoff. We'll see if my voice survives. So you can hear it. It's been a long week. Lots of talking. When I get rolling, we go downhill. If you're joining here for the first time, subscribe button is down below. We did it. We hit 8,000. We're talking about it for the last couple of weeks. Thank you very much for getting us over the 8,000 subscriber mark. If you want to get notified when these shows go live, you can change the notification option. You can hit the bell and change it to all, and you'll get a little push notification. So if I choose to mix in these shows, maybe we do a little bit more, you'll get notified of that right on your phone. We'll do this and keep it really simple. I'll give my updated thoughts on both games, along with some plays that we're looking at, some things we've already bet on, and then I'll go into questions. We'll try to do 4 or 5 good questions per game that I'll pick from the chat. So if you want to get your questions answered, drop them in the live chat. I'll pull up some of the best ones. We'll wrap everything up and get you ready for the Wild Card Saturday games. Quickly, my thoughts on Cleveland-Houston. Going back to the live stream on Wednesday, it's been a lot of back and forth for me on what I think about this game. It's been a lot of back and forth on the line as well. I kind of summarize it at this. Initially, when the lines came out last Sunday, I thought it was going to be on Cleveland in some way. And I thought there was a good chance that we may ultimately release Cleveland as well through the service, because my thoughts were simply this. First, the home road defensive splits, I think, are really overblown. Discussed it a lot on the live stream. A lot of explosive plays, a lot of turnovers. Some of the home games aided by weather. It's just a really noisy stat and talking point that I thought was kind of overtaking the game and perhaps making Cleveland look a little bit worse than they were actually performing. People wanted to buy into that. I'm not fully buying into that exactly. I also thought that the experience of the head coach, of the play caller, and Kevin Stefanski, of the quarterback, and Joe Flacco, the defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, I thought that mattered a lot against Houston and C.J. Stroud with the first-time quarterback, first-time play caller, first-time head coach. As the week progressed, kind of got to understanding that this probably very well priced in. When you look at the market, we were 3.5 here just a couple of weeks ago against Davis Mills and Case Keenum. Basically been sitting at 2.5 the entire week against C.J. Stroud. And where I started to kind of crumble here, and my conclusion is that the price is right, is when you start to think about this game a little bit further, you have a very positive injury report for Houston over the last 24 hours. Inactives today, all broke in their favor with the defensive line. You have C.J. Stroud, who kind of got his playoff debut in a sense last week against Indianapolis, looked really, really good. You also have a spot here where it really is a lot of variance when it comes down to, can Cleveland get pressure on Stroud with their defensive line, which is a very hard thing to predict. C.J. Stroud, incredible from the clean pocket. When pressure gets to him, becomes really tough for him to move the football. The splits for him between kept clean and pressured, significant. But it's just, again, it's a really difficult thing to bet on. And you have now the kind of uncertainty about Denzel Ward. I know he's out there. I know pregame he's getting the clearance, but there was a great breakdown by Mina on ESPN yesterday about how much he matters to the Browns and how much he matters to the man coverage that they're able to play, which is where Stroud really has his most difficulty, is when he gets those man looks. So if you have Ward at less than 100%, his impact is enormous, especially now so that Noah Brown is up. You have healthier wide receivers for the Texans. It's not just Nico Collins out there. So I think from the side perspective, we're at the right price right now, which is a boring thing to say on a live stream. I think from the total, we're at the right price as well. What I will say, from a prop that I play, took a flyer on C.J. Stroud anytime touchdown. That's at 5-1. He leads the team, believe it or not, in carries from the goal line. I think this is a spot where Houston, against this Cleveland defense, it's going to be an earn every yard type of situation. I think there's inevitably going to be a spot where the Texans are down near the goal line. There's been a willingness to give him the ball. I know a couple other groups like his rushing yard number over. That was in the low teens. That one, to me, is kind of at its peak, but I do like that one as a long shot flyer here. Stroud anytime touchdown at 5-1. Going to look through the questions here. If you have something on this Cleveland game specifically you want to answer, I will get to it. Let's start off with David. What kind of game script do you see in Cleveland, Houston? Houston tries to dominate possession by running and short passes. Browns air it out. I think Cleveland will be a little bit more pass heavy regardless, just because of how great Houston has been against the run. I think Houston defending the run against the Colts last week, perhaps a little bit misleading because they had all these guys on the defensive line either missing or banged up. Everyone's back today. You got the big guys in the middle. You got the pass rushers on the edge. This is a loaded Texans D line that's been great all season long and has been sneaky, very good against the run. So I think that's going to entice Cleveland to throw it more, especially so if they're trailing. Obviously, it's going to be very tough for them to get much on the ground if Houston's able to get quite comfortable. I think on the other side, the big thing that I want to see is you have the first-time play caller in Bobby Slowick making his playoff debut. In this spot, he may very well end up tightening up. One of the big complaints against Houston, really, and whether it's a mandate of Ryan's, whether it's Slowick going on his own because of his San Francisco roots, have really been run heavy on first and second down relative to expectation. So I think that's something that you can watch for quite early. My hope, if you're a Texans fan or a backer, is that they would go pass heavy, but I'm kind of split on what they might do in this spot. My big worry here is if Houston gets a lead, they tighten up with more runs on first and second down, which isn't going to be a great thing against this Browns defense. And so my answer to this would be Houston leading, they get tight, and Cleveland looks appealing catching up. If it flips the other way around, I think Cleveland has difficulty running it, and they're going to keep the foot on the gas. Tommy, we'll get to the scheduling change later. We'll focus on these two Saturday games for this one specifically. Matthew says, here's a wild one. What about this prop? 280-1 for 1+ successful 2-point conversion in all 6 wildcard games. No idea. I'm going to end up passing on that one, Matthew. Tough one to say. Connor says, feels like sharp Texans versus square Cleveland. I certainly can see that sentiment when you look at how this number has moved. You look at as well as when there were clear buy points on both of these teams. Browns very early, Texans back at 3. But I think a lot of confusion in this is with that clear price point from just a couple of weeks ago, kind of lingering over this, pushing money perhaps back the other way anytime we've got to 3. Game day money so far has been more so from what I can see on screen on Houston than it has Cleveland, but really quite a back and forth. John K says, would you look at Stroud longest completion over 36.5 yards, but Cleveland defense, one weakness, allowing big plays? A lot of luck goes into this. Certainly, you're very right. When it comes to Cleveland's defense, especially so on the road, they've given up some huge pass plays. They've mostly been one-offs, but that's, again, a spot where Houston's kind of done the same thing on the other side on offense, hunting those big plays. It's something Stroud really does well from a clean pocket. But part of the issue here, and just a lot of difficulty I see in the handicap, is the variance that comes with that pass rush up front. And so certainly if he can get a little protection up front, I do think the deep ball is going to be there. Wish I had more conviction on that one way or the other. If you put me on the spot and said I have to pick one, I would take the shot with the over at the 36.5, just because of Cleveland's tendencies all season to give up that big one in the pass play on the road. But I don't love it either way. Looking at that one. So that really wraps up this Houston-Cleveland game. Tough one, good spread, good total. We'll take the flyer on Stroud anytime touchdown at 5-1. Late game, Chiefs-Dolphins. We released over 43.5 on the service. I like the over quite a bit. I think this is a game that is getting overblown by the cold weather narrative that's kind of overtaking everything. Reminds me very much of the Patriots-Steelers game on Thursday night just a couple of weeks ago in early December. This total's come down quite a bit. We have the earlier season reference point, which was north of 50. We had this game open up above 46.5. This is now coming down. I think this is a good spot to look at the over at the current price of 43.5. Here's what I'll say about this one specifically. There's on Twitter, we've seen all the cold weather stuff everywhere. That's all anybody wants to talk about. A lot of discussion that I've seen about like the frozen tundra narrative and how the field's going to be cold and it makes it difficult to move. Everyone may be overlooking the fact that Arrowhead has a heated playing surface. They've got pipes underneath that they installed a few years ago to keep the soil temperature above 40 degrees and specifically prevent the field from freezing. And so that idea of the clips that we're going to see in the game previews leading up to tonight, where you're going back to like the 60s and the 70s in those games where legitimately the ground was completely frozen, I don't think that that is going to be the case. It's obviously going to be very cold. We get that. That's why the total has come down so much. But in terms of the surface itself, that's something to keep in mind. Another kind of like thing that I would throw out there is, as we discussed in the Wednesday live stream, cold weather on its own isn't historically tied to lower scores or a significant offensive drop-off like what we see from wind. And the big indecisive point of this game when I was talking about it on Wednesday was, what are we going to get from a wind speed for this game? And as the week progressed, that wind speed decreased to the point now where the forecasts looking 5 hours ahead just aren't showing that there's going to be that much of an impactful wind on the field. It's going to be cold. Teams are preparing for that. Kind of know what you're getting into. It's going to be fun to watch. I just don't think the weather on its own is going to lead to lower scoring like it's being talked and bet. Now, another thing that I think is valuable to watch and valuable to take in mind if you're deciding to act on this total based perhaps on what you're seeing here on the live stream or a thought you've had during the week, is that Kansas City, before the Cincinnati game, that was week 17, the final game that the Chiefs starters played. Before the game kicked off, there were reports that came out that the Chiefs all week spent time in practice changing their offense. And there were 2 points of specific focus. The first was simplifying the verbiage in the huddle. The second was getting to the line of scrimmage quicker. In that Cincinnati game, the Chiefs had their best offensive output in several weeks. But the big thing to take away was that the offense looked significantly different. In that entire game, there was not one instance where the Chiefs got to the line of scrimmage and the play clock was at single digits. That was something that plagued Kansas City for a number of weeks leading up to that Cincinnati game, and it was a point of emphasis to change. The fallout from that, now that we're in a game week where the starters are going to play, is Chiefs players have been interviewed this week talking about how much it helped the offense, but also how much of an emphasis they have now on getting to the line quicker and playing faster. And what this enables the Chiefs to do is put the game more in the hands of Patrick Mahomes at the line of scrimmage. There's some good interviews this week that detailed how he was able to change plays at the line in that Cincinnati game to start hunting big plays. It also got him moving out of the pocket a lot more, something that he was doing basically to avoid being sacked, but not by design, to get the offense in rhythm and start completing quick plays. So if you're watching this game tonight, if you want to see the change in the Chiefs offense, keep an eye on the play clock when they break the huddle. And what you'll find is when they get to the line of scrimmage, that play clock's probably going to be in the low to mid teens. It's not going to be those single digit play clock numbers that you're used to seeing from the Chiefs. They're going to be taking this in the same way they did the Bengals game. That offense is going to be going a lot quicker. I also think there's going to be a big edge for the Chiefs running inside zone with Isaiah Pacheco against this Dolphins defense. The weather and the situation is going to kind of allow that to be a little bit more effective than what it typically is. And I think these Dolphins injuries at linebacker are going to have a lot of trouble defending that too. So if you have all of these things together with the fact that the Chiefs are rested, I think it bodes well for the KC offense. For the Dolphins on the other side, I think they're going to be able to run the football, but I perhaps think that the pass game with Tyreek Hill, we're expecting Jalen Waddle to start. We're also expecting Mostert to be there out of the backfield. I think that's going to make quite a big difference too. Miami's maybe going to have a little bit more difficulty running it just because they rely so much on the outside zone scheme. But in this spot, we saw them in that first meeting in Germany have a lot of success late running the football and broke off some big plays in between the tackles too. So I think the Miami ground game is in there. And when I'm looking at this at 43.5, we have Reed on one side, McDaniel on the other, two coaches that are great and conducive to overs, especially so if Miami ends up trailing in this spot. KC consistently runs. You get the Dolphins playing catch up. To me, it's a fairly easy decision to look to the over in this game at the current price of 43.5. So like points in this one tonight. And that would be the main look so far of Wild Card Weekend for myself and the team at Right Angle Sports. Couple more questions that we want to get to before we wrap up and send you on your way to watch the games. Forgot about a prop look. Like Mecole Hardman as another long shot touchdown, 6-1, and you can potentially look and find that a little bit higher too. I know there's been some interest in his receiving yards as well, but I think the Chiefs end up going back to another guy that they've had in the system for a long time and trust. So that's another long shot touchdown number that you can look at. Jeff says Chiefs under 44. Just gave a lot of thoughts as to why. Definitely going the other way in that one. Anthony says Pacheco over 67.5 rush. There was also a question earlier that came in from Rev Harp 77 where he was looking at Pacheco or Kelce. So I think two things here. One, I think it's a big spot for Pacheco. Believe it or not a fantasy guy ever. You guys know that who follow me for a long time. I got strong-armed into playing the FPPC or the FFPC, whichever the playoff challenge is. The mainstay of the team that I built with a friend was solely around Isaiah Pacheco, just because we think the Chiefs make a good run. We think he's going to be a big part of this game and one going forward. So relative to that line too, I look at this for Pacheco as a big potential breakout spot, considering those Dolphins defensive injuries. So between the two, I would look at Pacheco. What I would say about Kelce is it's pretty clear to me that he's dealing with something besides the off-field distractions. That week of rest that he got last week, I think, is going to help quite a bit. Michael says Hill rushing attempts might Miami do just to get the ball. Come again? I am Ron Burgundy. I get what you're saying. I've not seen anything listed for Hill rushing attempts. So I don't know how to answer that one, but it's an interesting thought that you probably would expect, especially if Waddle is out there in these playoff games. You usually get the playbook extended and all the extra plays being pulled up from the back. I'll look through another couple of questions. Fred, no, I don't agree to the tie. I think it's too low. John says, play calling tendencies for the first quarter or first half for Houston, Texas, or Houston, Cleveland, I guess is what you're asking. Conservative or aggressive? I have a feeling Houston tightens up a little bit and Cleveland comes out firing. I kind of got that in David's question as well, that was asked as well. Brandon says Cleveland first drive has been a masterclass lately. Good point there for sure as well. A couple last questions before we send everybody to the couch. Jonathan Silverman, MVS has hands like feet. Well, he was part of some of these interviews that were talking about how the offense changed. He also got the full rest week last week, which would lead me to believe he's probably going to be featured to some extent in the game plan today. Otherwise, they probably were not giving him the full week off last week. So that would be something that I look at too. Paulo, I know where you're going with this, with Mahomes and these rushing yards in the playoffs specifically, and how much he gets his legs involved. He's certainly getting out of the pocket more by choice and by design. That's what we saw against that Cincinnati game. So he's going to be on the move more. I would maybe look at attempts more so than I would yardage specifically on that one. All right. That looks pretty good. Again, guys, subscribe button is down below. Before the first game kicks off on these playoff game days going forward, we'll do a 30-minute prior live stream to just kind of wrap up and finalize all thoughts, share any final thoughts on plays, on bets, on props. I'll try to do as good of a job as I can at answering all the questions. They come in on the right-hand side and they kind of go up as I'm talking, and I don't want to be always looking over, so I try to balance it out. So if I do miss, don't feel bad if you're dropping them in a couple more times as we go forward on the live streams. But I appreciate everybody for stopping by. Gerard, I was dead wrong about what I said about Pete, but we'll get to that next Wednesday. Maybe we can do a coach commentary side with all these coaching changes and switches. But that was brutal timing for me on Wednesday. And I was looking for you on Twitter to tag you in a tweet and be like, I can't believe that I said that 30 minutes before it happened. But I couldn't find you on there as well. So I'm glad you brought that up. But let's get into some of the coaching stuff on Wednesday when everybody is back. All right. Enjoy the games today. Enjoy the early one. I'll be on with Rob later as well for probably the first and second quarter. Whale said I can hang around too a bit for that. So we'll be chatting about the Chiefs-Dolphins first quarter plus, at least, is the way that I'll be over there on the stream if you guys are watching that one as well. If not, enjoy the games. We'll catch you back here 30 minutes before kick tomorrow before the early game goes. Enjoy the games today, guys. We'll chat to you tomorrow.